The desert stretched endlessly in front of us, a vast ocean of burnt gold, dirt, and shimmering heat that swallowed the horizon in every direction. My friend Darren drove with one hand on the wheel, squinting at the GPS like it had personally offended him. The screen flickered repeatedly, freezing, recalibrating, spinning. It was the 5th time it had glitched in the last 10 minutes. "Dude, your signal's dying," I muttered. He grumbled. "There's no reason it should. We're maybe 20 miles outside Goldfield. There's coverage everywhere out here." His confidence didn't match the dead silence around us. The radio had begun crackling with static 20 minutes back. The temperature had dropped unnaturally, enough for the AC to start pumping warm air as if confused by the sudden shift. And worst of all, neither of us could shake the feeling that something was watching us through the endless stretches of rock and desert shrubs. We weren't ghost hunters. We weren't urban explorers. We weren't even particularly brave. We were just idiots who took a wrong exit off Highway 95 and decided to keep going instead of turning back. The sun had begun dipping behind the desert ridges, casting jagged shadows across the land. The world was slowly draining of color. And then we saw it. At first, it looked like a mirage, hazy rooflines bending in the heat. But the closer we got, the more real it became. A cluster of old wooden buildings sitting in a shallow valley bowl, their roofs jagged, walls caving in, windows shattered like broken teeth. A mining town, completely abandoned. But there was something wrong with it, even from a distance. The buildings slumped in odd angles, as if the earth beneath them had shifted. The wooden boards were blackened in uneven blotches, not from fire, but from something else. Something like rot, but dry, powdery, unnatural. And every rooftop seemed to dip inward, as if something heavy had once sat on them. "Is that on the map?" I asked quietly. "No," Darren said, already slowing down. "But it's a whole town. How the hell do you hide a whole town?" My stomach tightened. The closer we got, the colder the air became. I rolled my window down. A smell drifted in, dust, rusted metal, and something else beneath it. Something faintly sweet. Wrongly sweet. "Turn around," I said quickly. "Seriously, Darren, turn around. This place looks..." "Dude, stop. Come on. We just check it out for 10 minutes. Old mining towns can't hurt us." But as he spoke, the clouds above thickened, swirling unnaturally fast. A light breeze pushed sand across the road in delicate streams. The entire valley seemed to darken unnaturally early, like shadows gathering in places there shouldn't be shadows. The town waited for us, silent and slumped, as though holding its breath. We rolled onto the dirt path leading to it. The tires crunched over scattered rocks and pieces of metal. A head of faded sign leaned sideways, its wood eaten by time. We stepped out of the car. The cold hit instantly, tapping, sharp, biting through our shirts. The desert wind whispered through the abandoned structures with a strange, hollow tone, as though something deep in the earth was breathing. The town looked dead. Yet I felt watched, observed. Darren stretched, cracking his neck. "Let's check out the main street." The sun dipped behind the ridge entirely, leaving the town washed in tail-end twilight. Long shadows stretched across the sand like black veins. Our footsteps echoed too loudly against the ground, as if the dry earth didn't absorb sound. I paused. The smell again. Sweet. Metallic. Like dried blood. We passed a collapsed saloon, its doors hanging off rusted hinges, a general store with windows blown out, a narrow alley swallowed by darkness. And every building had that same strange blackened wood, like something had seeped through it from the inside. "This place feels wrong," I whispered. "Yeah," Darren admitted softly. "Feels like it's waiting for something." We walked a bit further before my eyes caught movement. A door. Closing. Softly. Deliberately. At the far end of the street. Darren froze too. "Did you..." "Yes," I cracked. There was no wind strong enough to move it. The building had no glass, no curtains, and the door wasn't loose. It had been pulled shut. Someone was inside. Someone in an abandoned town not on any map. We stood in silence, staring at the building. No lights, no sound, no movement. Then, the door creaked back open. Just an inch. Just enough to show dark space inside. The temperature dropped again, significantly. Our breath fogged. "Don't go closer," I whispered. But Darren whispered back, "I think someone needs help." He stepped forward. I grabbed his arm, hard. That's when we heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Crunching in the sand. From behind us. We spun around. Nothing. But the footsteps continued. Moving. Circling. The town felt smaller suddenly, its decaying walls closing in around us. The shadows along the rooftops deepened, as if something moved above, too fast to fully see, too slow to be imagination. I felt something brush past my shoulder, a brief whisper of cold air like fingers. And then the voice came. Close. Too close. Right behind my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I turned so violently I nearly fell. Nothing, just the empty street stretching into darkness. "Darren, we need to leave right now." He didn't argue this time, but as we turned toward the car, we saw something that froze us in place. Our tire tracks, the ones leading into the town, were gone. The sand lay untouched behind us, smooth, as if we never arrived, as if the town had erased our way out. And for the first time since entering that valley, I felt something truly primal rise in my throat. We were trapped. The moment we realized our tire tracks had vanished, something inside me shifted. Some instinct older than language. The desert fell unnaturally silent, as though the wind itself had been swallowed. Even the distant hum of insects had faded. Darren swallowed hard, wiping sweat, or maybe fear, from his forehead. We must have just missed them," he muttered, though no conviction sat behind his words. "Wind probably covered the tracks." But we both knew the truth. The wind wasn't blowing. The sand wasn't disturbed. There was no natural explanation. The townsfolk, though long dead, had erased our escape path. "What do we do?" I whispered. Darren scanned the collapsing buildings around us, eyes darting as if searching for a direction that felt less dangerous. None did. They all leaned toward us like crooked, listening giants. "Maybe if we climb up the ridge," he said weakly. "From there we'll get signal, maybe see a road." The ridge was steep, jagged, and cast in an unnaturally dark shadow. It looked like a wall, a boundary, but anything was better than staying where we stood. We start walking. Every step felt heavier, like the earth tugged at our ankles. The smell hit us again, not just sweetness, but now a deeper rot, like something dead baked under the desert sun for days. It drifted from the north side of the town, where a cluster of structures slumped together around a central pit. A mine. The old entrance sat open, its wooden beams warped and blackened, leaning dangerously inward. A rusted pulley system sat half buried in the sand. The mine shaft yawned beneath it, a perfect circle of darkness, breathing cold air up toward us. "We're not going in there," I said instantly. Darren didn't answer. He was staring at something. At first I thought it was a shadow, but shadows didn't move like that. It slid between the leaning buildings, tall and thin, almost skeletal. A man's silhouette. One moment it was 50 feet away, then suddenly 20, then 10, each time appearing in the next line of shadows without ever stepping out of them. It stopped at the mouth of the mine, standing perfectly still. "Darren," I breathed, "don't move." We both froze. The figure stood facing us, but the shadows clung tightly around it, like a second skin. I couldn't see his face, not even a hint of skin, but I could feel him watching us, waiting. Then he lifted an arm, slowly, and pointed down into the mine. Darren whispered, terrified. He must have just missed them. The figure nodded once, barely visible, but unmistakably deliberate. No, I said, backing away. No way. We're not giving it what it wants. But the ground suddenly shook, not violently, but in a deep, groaning rumble that rolled through the sand, like something massive shifting beneath the earth. A warning, or a threat. The man in the shadows tilted his head slightly, still pointing, still waiting. Darren whispered, I think he's trying to help us. How? I nearly shouted. Maybe he lived here. Maybe he knows what's happening. The figure nodded again. This time, a faint glint flashed where his face should have been, as though a single eye caught what little sunlight remained, or something metallic was embedded there. The rumbling grew stronger. A crack tore across the ground behind us, splitting the street in a long, jagged line that snaked toward us. Dust rose. Wooden beams groaned. The whole town seemed to tighten like fists closing around us. The man in the shadows' voice slid out of the mine's mouth, not loud, but perfectly audible even from 50 feet away. Get below. I felt my heart stutter. No echo, no breath. Not human. Darren, I gasped. It's a trap. But the cracking ground behind us reached our feet. A deep splitting noise surged under us, like the bones of the earth shapping. The man's voice came again, firmer, colder. Get below now. And the mass of sand behind us dropped 3 feet all at once. A sinkhole. The town was collapsing. Run! I yelled. We sprinted, straight toward the mine, straight toward the figure. The desert ground shook harder, vibrating through my legs, through my teeth. The buildings let out a chorus of groans and cracks, collapsing inward in slow motion horror. We reached the mine entrance just as the ground behind us gave way completely. Sand and debris roared into the hole like water down a drain. I turned to look, but the shadow figure wasn't behind us anymore. He was already inside the mine. His voice echoed from within the darkness. Deeper. Both of you. Darren stepped forward, hypnotized. I grabbed his arm. This is insane. He turned to me, face pale. If we stay up there, we die. If we go down there, maybe we don't. The mine breathed coldness. Absolute darkness. Something ancient and wrong. And from within that black pit, the man's silhouette waited. Still. Silent. Watching. We had no choice. With the town collapsing behind us, we stepped into the mine, swallowed by darkness, following a man who wasn't a man. Because the earth had decided it wanted us below.
The shaft emptied into a cavern so wide that Harper's flashlight beam vanished before it could find the opposite wall. The air here was different, warmer, heavier, and filled with a faint metallic tang that clung to the back of her throat. The crunch of gravel under her boots echoed like footsteps following too close behind. She forced herself not to look back. Cole stayed close, sweeping his light slowly along the jagged canyon of rock. This wasn't on any map, he whispered. No way the old miners dug this naturally. He was right. The rock surfaces were too smooth in places, too deliberately carved in others. Harper's beam caught something glittering embedded in the walls, thin silver lines that ran like veins beneath the stone, pulsing faintly, as though catching a light source deeper inside the earth. They didn't shimmer. They throbbed. Her breath hitched. "Are those not minerals?" Cole finished, voice flat. A low vibration rumbled through the cavern. Dust shook loose from the ceiling. The ground didn't tremble. The air did. Harper pressed her free hand to her chest, feeling that same vibration humming beneath her skin. As if something beneath the earth was stirring. As if something immense was waking. They moved forward cautiously, toward a dock opening framed by rusted mining beams. The wood had warped over time, bowing inward as though under enormous pressure. Strange symbols were carved into them, deep, almost claw-like markings. Harper leaned closer, tracing one with her gloved fingertips. It was sharp enough to cut through leather. "These aren't blasting marks," she muttered. Cole swallowed. "No, they're warnings." Beyond the beams, the cavern narrowed into a descending tunnel. The deeper they went, the louder the hum became. At times, the vibration seemed almost like breathing. Long, slow, labored inhales and exhales that grew louder, then faded again. Halfway down, Harper's flashlight flickered, just once. When the beam returned, she swore the tunnel walls had subtly shifted, bulging inward like ribs. She shook her head. "It's the dark, that's all." But she didn't believe her own words. The passage widened again, opening into a chamber littered with the remnants of mining equipment. Helmets crushed inward as though by enormous pressure, shovels twisted like metal vines, and tracks bent in impossible angles. "Something down here," Cole whispered. Something they weren't supposed to dig up. Harper found the first miner's journal near a collapsed cart. It was old, its leather cover cracked, its pages yellowed and fragile. She opened it carefully. Scrawled handwriting covered the first page, the ink still dark, still legible. "We thought it was ore. It wasn't." Her mouth dried. The next page shook in her hands. The earth was alive, not metaphorically, breathing, watching, listening. Cole stepped closer, reading over her shoulder. "We kept digging because the foreman said the silver vein was the largest he'd ever seen, but it wasn't silver. It moved at night, shifted, changed." Harper flipped another page. It spoke to Lewis first, not out loud, inside his head. Said it needed out, said we were freeing it. Her pulse hammered in the throat. The next entry was shorter. Lewis tried to cut it open. It screamed. The whole mountain screamed. Harper closed the journal quickly, her hand shaking. Cole exhaled a shaky breath. "We need to leave. We've seen enough." Harper nodded, but the cavern rumbled again. Longer, deeper, closer. A faint glow rose from below them, a sickly white luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. Not their own heartbeat. Something else's. Harper and Cole exchanged a look, then followed the sloping ground toward the glow. Every instinct begged them to turn back, but something stronger pulled them forward. At the chamber's center lay an enormous fissure, wide enough to swallow a truck. The glowing veins Harper had seen in the walls converged here, branching into the crack like roots feeding into a central core. Except they weren't roots. They were tendrils, reactive, pulsing, alive. Harper crouched near the edge, shining her light down. The tendrils vanished into darkness that felt bottomless. The hum rose again, so loud her teeth buzzed. Then, something moved in the fissure. Not the tendrils, not a cave-in, not a trick of light. Something massive shifted far below, like the rearranging of stone or the stretching of flesh after a long, long sleep. Cole stumbled back. No, we are not supposed to be here." The fissure widened with a cracking roar. A burst of warm air blasted upward, extinguishing their flashlights instantly. Harper choked on dust and heat. The chamber plunged into darkness. A whisper crawled through the cavern. Not in the air, inside her mind. Soft at first, then unmistakable. "Free me." Harper froze. "Cole, did you hear?" But Cole was quiet. Too quiet. Harper turned slowly. Cole stood near the far wall, stiff and unmoving, his head tilted unnaturally to the side. His breathing was shallow, ragged. His eyes were wide, reflecting the pale glow rising from the fissure. The tendrils were retracting from the walls, pulling back, as if preparing, as if something was about to emerge. And then she understood. The miners didn't die from a collapse. The town wasn't abandoned because of a downturn. The mine wasn't closed because it depleted. They closed it because they found something beneath Nevada that was never meant to be unearthed. Something ancient, something patient, something hungry. Harper reached for Cole, but a deafening crack split the cavern. The fissure widened again, this time enough for something enormous to begin pushing upward. A massive silhouette rose within the glow. Long, limb-like, root-like, but unmistakably alive. The whisper returned, now louder, clearer, almost pleased. "You came back to finish what they began." Harper stumbled backward, her boots slipping on loose stone. She fought to regain her balance as the heat intensified, the fissure blazing like a furnace throat opening. Cole finally spoke, but not in his own voice. "Harper, it wants out." She turned slowly toward him and saw the tendril coiled around his leg. She hadn't heard it, hadn't seen it move. She screamed his name, but the sound was drowned by the roar of shifting earth. The chamber trembled violently as the creature began emerging fully, and Harper realized what the miners dug up wasn't a vein. It was a vein in the literal sense. They had cut open something alive, and it wasn't finished waking up.
The tapping at the back door continued with an unsettling rhythm, slow and deliberate, like someone feeling their way through the wood grain with the tip of a fingernail. I stood in the hallway, halfway between the living room and the kitchen, frozen in place. The house was dimly lit, not dark, but not warm either, as if the bulbs themselves sensed something was wrong and refused to glow at full strength. The tapping stopped. Silence spread through the house like fog, thick and heavy, filling every corner until even the air felt weighted. Above me, the soft creak of the floorboards signaled Evelyn moving around her room. I didn't call for her. I didn't want her to startle her, didn't want her coming downstairs to see whatever might have been outside. I forced myself forward one step at a time, my pulse throbbing behind my eyes. When I reached the kitchen doorway, I saw the back door silhouetted in the soft spill of the porch light. The curtain hung still. The room was dead quiet. I almost allowed myself to believe I'd imagined everything. Then the handle twisted. Not violently, not like someone was trying to break in. Gently, curious, testing. I felt the blood drain from my face, my breath hitching as the metal clicked softly under pressure. The lock held, thank God, but the unseen visitor tried again, this time with a little more insistence. A faint scrape followed, nails or fingers or something dry dragging down the door. I stepped backward until my spine pressed against the counter. Then Evelyn's voice floated down the stairs, soft and firm, as if she were repeating instructions. "It's okay, Dottie. She promised not to hurt us." I swallowed hard. "Evelyn, stay upstairs." No response, just the whisper of her feet across the carpet and the faint thump of her bedroom door closing. The handle twisted a third time, sharper and patient now. But when I reached for the nearest object, a heavy glass mixing bowl, the handle stopped abruptly. No more tapping, no scraping, no sound at all. I approached the door slowly, bowl raised, and leaned just close enough to see through a tiny gap in the curtain. The porch was empty. But the frost, still clinging to the boards, held new prints. Small, bare footprints facing the door, and beside them, a pair of handprints. So small, yet the fingers were too long, the palms too narrow. My stomach lurched. Beneath the handprints, pressed into the frost, was a message traced by a childlike finger. "Hello, Daddy." I jerked the curtain closed and locked the deadbolt a second time. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the hallway with all the lights on, one eye on the hallway, the other on the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. Every so often, the wind pushed against the house with a groan, and shadows swayed across the curtains in ways that made my heart skip. Around 2 a.m., as my exhaustion began to blur the edges of my vision, a faint fecal echoed from upstairs. Not Evelyn's. Too light, too airy, it drifted downward like dust falling through a sunbeam. I stood abruptly. The giggle came again, and then Evelyn's voice. "Not yet. Dottie's scared." I moved quickly but quietly up the staircase, feeling each step creak like a betrayal. When I reached her bedroom door, I pressed my ear against it. Evelyn was whispering, fast and soft, the way children do when they're talking under blankets during a sleepover. But there was another sound layered beneath her voice, something faint, rhythmic, like someone breathing through a thin slit in their teeth. I opened the door. Evelyn sat cross-legged on her bed facing the far corner of the room. The nightlight beside her cast a warm amber glow, illuminating her silhouette. But the corner she was staring into was swallowed in darkness, deeper than the rest of the room. She didn't turn when I entered, didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge me at all. Her gaze stayed fixed on the shadowed corner, or rather on the space just past it. "Evelyn," I whispered, trying to keep my voice calm. "Who are you talking to?" She finally turned her head towards me, but only halfway. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They remained fixed on my shoulder, or rather on the space just past it. "Daddy, she says you should go to bed. She says she'll wait." I looked at the corner. Nothing. No movement, no shape. But the darkness felt wrong, like it had depth, like it was hiding something just out of sight. "Sweetheart," I said, stepping closer to her, "there's nobody there." She finally turned fully towards me then, and that was worse. Because her expression wasn't confused or scared, it was sympathetic. "She's shy," Evelyn whispered, glancing back at the corner. "And she doesn't like when you lie." I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "What did she tell you?" She paused, listening to something I couldn't hear, and then she said you saw her at the porch." My skin prickled. I didn't see anyone. Another pause, another moment of listening, and then Evelyn shook her head slowly, her voice almost regretful. "She says you're lying again." I forced myself not to look at the corner again. I didn't want to, because some buried instinct told me that if I did see something, I wouldn't be able to look away. I gently pulled the blanket over Evelyn's legs. "Sweetie, it's really late. Try to get some sleep." She didn't argue. But before I turned off the light, she said something that sank deep under my skin and stayed there like a splinter. "Daddy, she wants to play a game with you tomorrow." I forced a shaky smile. "What kind of game?" Evelyn looked up at me. Her eyes were calm. Too calm. "Hide and seek." I slept in the hallway that night, sitting against the wall with a blanket wrapped around me and the bedroom doors cracked open. I listened to every sound, the house settling, the wind brushing the pane, the occasional soft whisper from Evelyn's room. At some point after 4 a.m., something lightly touched the carpet, like footsteps heading down the hall. But when I lifted my head, the hallway was empty. Empty, but wrong. Colder than before, like something had been there a moment ago. Morning came with a dull gray sky and a fog so thick that it swallowed the trees behind our house. Even from the porch, the woods were barely more than a smudged wall of shifting shadows. Evelyn wore her backpack and waited quietly by the door, humming her strange tune again.
When she saw me watching her, she offered a soft smile. She wants to play when I get home. She said you don't get to hide.
Harper didn't remember how long she stood frozen on the narrow ledge, staring down into the cavern as the creature's titanic head lifted from the molten fissure. Time didn't seem to move normally anymore. The air shimmered with a heat that felt alive, pulsing in rhythm with a thunderous heartbeat that shook the cavern walls. Dust rolled off the ceiling with each pulse, like the entire mountain was breathing along with the thing it had once imprisoned. The creature's eyes, or the vast glowing cracks that resembled eyes, remained fixed on Harper. Their light wasn't blinding, yet looking into them felt like staring into a furnace filled with memories that weren't hers. And beneath that glow, something moved. Shapes, flickers of images. A mining cart, lanterns swinging, men screaming, hands clawing at the rock as they tried to seal the entrance they had opened too wide. She wasn't just seeing what happened here. She was remembering it. Her knees buckled and she clung to the wall, digging her nails into the rock until her fingertips bled. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop." But the mountain didn't listen. Another heartbeat slammed through the cavern and Harper gasped when the creature's voice entered her mind. Not words, just a sound, an ancient exhale, like a storm wind that had traveled too long underground. Below her, the tendrils writhed upward, extending toward her like searching fingers. They dragged across the cavern floor, leaving glowing trails behind them, their tips curling, sensing, smelling. And then she saw him. Cole. He stood on a high boulder near the fissure, his silhouette framed by the blinding glow. His posture was straight, almost regal, and completely not his. The tendrils that had retreated earlier now connected to his back and shoulders, merging with him like roots feeding a tree. When he turned toward her, his eyes shone with the same pale, luminescent cracks as the creature's. "Harper," he called out, his voice echoing unnaturally through the cavern. "You don't have to be afraid. It wants to show you, to give back what was taken." Harper's heart thrashed in her chest. "Cole, listen to me. Whatever this thing is, it's controlling you. Fight it." Cole shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. I'm not fighting it because it's not trying to hurt me." His mouth curled at the edges, but not into a smile, more like a grimace of awe. "It's waking up. We woke it. We should have left it alone." A tendril scraped against the ledge below her, leaving a smoldering streak behind it. Harper edged backwards, though there was nowhere to go but deeper along the treacherous stone shelf. "You can't outrun it," he continued calmly, stepping closer to the fissure's light. "The miners thought sealing the entrance would stop it. They didn't understand what they dug into, what they disturbed. They didn't understand the purpose." "What purpose?" Harper demanded through clenched teeth. Cole spread his arms, and the tendrils around him reacted, some tightening, some pulling back, others moving as though sensing the air. "The earth was not barren before us. It remembers what walked inside it, what lived here before we took its bones for ourselves." Harper's stomach dropped. This wasn't just a creature. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't even a monster. It was something older, something foundational, a presence woven into the land itself. The miners hadn't awakened some subterranean beast. They had awakened something like a sleeping ecosystem, a living mountain forced into stillness. And now it was rising. A fresh quake tore through the cavern, forcing Harper down to her knees. A slab of rock cracked away and plummeted into the molten pit, sending sparks and lava-like fragments spraying into the air. A few missed her face by inches. The creature's head rose higher, now level with the ledge, massive, jagged, and impossible. Its breath rattled through the cavern like an avalanche. A fissure split open along its crown, glowing brightly as if revealing a third eye. Cole spoke again, voice trembling in reverence. "It's been waiting for someone who can hear it. You're the first it reached." "What? Why me?" "Because your family was here before." Cole's glowing eyes locked onto hers. "Your great-grandfather was part of the crew. He left before the collapse, but he carried a piece of it with him. A splinter. A shard. Something it created." Harper felt sick. Her great-grandfather had worked here. She knew that. Her father had told her stories before he passed, about the boom years, the silver rush, and the sudden fiery collapse of the mine. He always said their family was lucky to have left Nevada before it happened. But not like this. Not carrying something alive. Something the mountain wanted back. The creature's tendrils climbed the ledge, curling closer, reaching for her ankles, her wrists, her throat. Harper scrambled backwards, but her heel hit the edge. Beyond that edge was a drop straight into the churning, molten pit, now boiling with awakened energy. Cole lifted his arm. The tendrils froze again. Harper gasped, her body shaking uncontrollably. Cole looked at her with genuine sadness now. It doesn't need your body, Harper. Only what was left behind inside you. Passed through blood. It's not your death it wants. He closed his fist. Harper felt something tear inside her, not physically, but deep, like a nerve being ripped from her very soul. Her vision blurred. She felt heat surge up her spine, memories not her own flooding her mind. The tendrils pulled and something intangible tore free, a thin, glowing thread rising from her chest and drifting toward the creature like smoke. Harper collapsed, gasping, her head spinning so violently she thought she might black out. The glowing thread merged with the creature's vast form, and the mountain moved. Slowly, too slowly, as if stretching after centuries of stillness. The fissure closed, sealing itself like a wound healing from the inside. The tendrils withdrew into the creature, the molten glow dimmed, the heartbeat slowed, and the creature descended. Not peacefully, not violently, just inevitably. It sank back into the earth, its massive head lowering, shoulders disappearing beneath molten rock, then ribs, then limbs, until the cavern was empty again. Except for Cole. He stood still for a moment, staring down into the sealed fissure. The glow faded from his eyes, replaced by horrified awareness. Harper, where are you? He turned. She was slumped on the ledge, barely conscious. Blood streaked down her arms. Her breath hitched, weak and shallow. Cole stumbled toward her, free now, human, terrified. Harper, oh God, Harper! A crack echoed through the chamber, then another. The walls trembled violently once more, but this time, they weren't opening, they were collapsing. The creature had sealed itself in and was burying the evidence. Cole, I choked out. We need to get out now. Cole hoisted her up, slinging her arm over his shoulder. Come on, I've got you. They scrambled along the ledge as chunks of rock rained down, some large enough to crush them where they stood. The miner's tunnel above them collapsed entirely, leaving only the alternate shaft Harper had spotted earlier, a steep climb that felt impossible in her condition. But Cole didn't let her fall. Keep going, he panted, dragging her upward. Behind them, the cavern imploded. The ground cracked, giant boulders dropping into the abyss where the fissure burned. By the time they reached the exit tunnel, dust was so thick they could barely breathe. The world behind them disintegrated in a deafening avalanche of stone. They burst out into the cold night air just as the mountain sealed itself shut forever. Harper collapsed into the dirt, coughing violently. Cole fell beside her, trembling. For a long time they said nothing. Then Cole whispered, voice barely audible, "What was that thing?" Harper stared up at the jagged silhouette of the mountain, its peak now slightly altered, higher, as if something inside had shifted before settling again. Her voice came out hollow. Not a creature. She swallowed painfully. A memory. Cole turned to her, confused. A memory? Harper nodded slowly. A memory of what the earth used to be before we carved into it. She closed her eyes. And tonight, we woke it up. The wind shifted, carrying dust from the mountain's surface across the barren Nevada desert. The chill felt deeper than cold, ancient, and watchful. Somewhere inside the sealed cavern, the heartbeat pulsed once more. Soft, faint, waiting.